What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here, joined by Josh Davis, just a couple of minutes late. We're just so excited for training camp. It took us a while to get started here. That's the simple excuse right there. Josh, welcome to day one of officially, I have to call, come on, it's the NFL season. We're here. It feels like Christmas. It's a little bit underwhelming because we're not an actual football game, but your first actual practice, the pads go on tomorrow. I know you're as excited as I am. What's up, man?
Absolutely, yes. How's it going? Apologies to everybody, obviously, for being late. That was my fault, technical difficulties, how we're doing there. But to your point, yes, football season, it does. It feels like, we had all the mini camp stuff and leading up to this and but it's like when training camp hits, it's every single time. It's like, all right, that's where something for me mentally just clicks of, okay, football season is finally back. Officially, the guys in the building. I know technically, yesterday the guys reported, but it's like, we didn't really see anything. And also kudos to the Eagles channel. I'm just going to say this because we hadn't seen a whole lot of footage.
Sure.
And thank you for a few videos, a little highlight there, because not everybody can be at training camp, obviously. So that was pretty cool. I'm just pumped, honestly, that we can talk about meaningful, even still take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but still some meaningful plays, some meaningful impact. Look at players, battling for roster spots and all that. So we're here, thankfully.
There you go. Yeah, you take it all with a grain of salt, but very quickly, things are going to ramp up here. We already talked about on previous shows how Nick Sirianni has kind of upped the ante on this training camp versus his previous three in the term that they have more actual, practices versus walkthroughs. The pads are going on much quicker. I don't remember how fast the pads went on last year, but I think it took at least 4 or 5 practices. The pads go on tomorrow based on reports that I saw, which is kind of a big deal. They want to see these guys going as soon as possible because, like we talk about, there are plenty of camp battles that are happening right now. And I think Nick Sirianni came out and said his really 2 favorite during his press conference, linebacker battle and the wide receiver 3 battle. And that linebacker battle today, Josh, I know you were following all the reporters that I was following on Twitter. They mixed everybody in there. I mean, it was Devin White and Zach Bond. It was Devin White and Nakobe Dean. It was Nakobe Dean and Zach Bond. That linebacker battle, we didn't get any sort of updates on how they played, but they're mixing all 3 of those guys in, and it feels like they're trying really hard to see if Nakobe Dean can be that guy.
It really does, yeah. And to your point, we got like limited access there. Josh B, I'm with him. Shout out to Josh B. Says, can we start a petition to get some live cameras at practice? That would be awesome.
Wouldn't that be nice?
If we were like a lot of other teams.
Every other
tweet
team
about the Kansas City camp and everything. It's like you see that and you're kind of just sitting there by the side going, wow, that must be nice. You could just, watch the entire practice. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So reading between the lines, though, to your point, and mentioning the linebackers, it looked like E.J. Smith had said that Nakobe Dean made a few plays. They'd be supposed tackles for loss. Again, they're not really tackling, but you would assume that he makes a tackle for loss. He got into the backfield another time. But then Zach Bond, according to Dave Zangaro, so again, you take it with whose opinion it is, but according to Dave Zangaro, made the play of the day on the defense. So breaking up a pass to CJ Uzomah. It's going to be interesting because, we lean towards, I think most people, you lean towards Zach Bond being the front runner, but nothing's a given for sure. And even as productive as, they supposedly are or end up being in training camp, like it won't mean as much until we get to joint practices and then even furthering that along to preseason. So positive steps, I would say, positive steps for all the guys, including, Jalen Hurts, who was very efficient today. But we're just kind of taking it with a grain of salt because, again, it's like, they did some stuff, but does it translate actually on the football field when we get into game situations versus, the 7-on-7s, 11-on-11 when they're not tackling people?
It's a great point. I saw it in the comment section here. I think it's Steven Knockel who says, biggest takeaway is Jalix Hunt doing what he did to Jordan Mailata and Fred Johnson in first-team reps, according to Ed Krantz. My one problem there is that, the offensive line and defensive line stuff you cannot take into full, I would say, belief until you get the pads on. Now, wide receivers, cornerbacks, quarterbacks, I think those are the teams, or those are the positions you can really kind of take away from on a practice like today. But if you're not actually being able to hit Jalix Hunt, like Jordan Mailata, he's not wearing pads. He kind of just has to, use the hands and absorb him. You're not really bending around tackles and trying to go ahead and lower below pad level and, terms like that. It's hard to go ahead and be like, oh, Jalix Hunt's going to be a baller because he beat Jordan Mailata today without pads. Tomorrow, that's when I'm really curious to see how the offensive line and defensive line shake up. Mekhi Becton playing at left guard today, in for the very slightly injured Landon Dickerson with the toe laceration, however bad that is.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Who knows
overall.
What that was behind the scenes there, but slip and slides are dangerous. Your homemade slip and slides.
So I've been told.
Although that looked like for people that didn't see the video, I'm sure most people have, but if you didn't see it, like, that looked like obviously a very souped up version. It's your homemade slip and slide, and he's got the soap and everything. I mean, it's probably
fun.
going beyond what you'd actually want to see. It did look fun, but it's like, does he actually need that? I would imagine, because no one actually reported. Who knows for sure? But I'd imagine that's where he got injured. Like, I don't think that you're injured and you're like, hey, let's go ahead and do the slip and slide here. So it is a funny story. I am with you also just on the point of Jalix Hunt. The one thing that I would just throw out there, and this is not to go overboard with it, I guess, and say like, hey, Jalix Hunt is, the going to be a starter. He's, getting all these reps and everything else. But it's got to be at least somewhat noteworthy to get first team reps in a Vic Fangio defense. Still, I get it. It's without pads, but he's got enough trust to say, hey, go in there for some first team reps. Now, I know that they're going to look at all these guys, but we were both talking about this, and this is what my assumption would have been of, hey, you're going to take at least the first practice, but I think a couple practices before you go, oh, Jalix Hunt, go get first team reps. Again, we'll put the caveat out there. There's no pads on, so you're not asking as much, but still to say, all right, here you go with the first team defense. I mean, we know the reports of Vic Fangio like Jalix Hunt. That was one of his top prospects going into the draft, just based on his physical tools and intangibles and versatility naturally. But I don't know. It will be interesting. And to your point, we'll see more once the pads come on and, if he can keep that up. But is worth keeping an eye on, obviously, with a guy that Fangio drafted. So we'll see.
There you go. I like Kristen Silk saying, what did I miss? Any top story? There isn't a top story. Like, nothing crazy happened today. Thankfully were no injuries. We'll talk about Cooper Dejean in a second. There was no, big brawls. I saw comments talking about the Texans brawl that Stephon Diggs was a part of. Already having a lot of fun over there. We'll have our fair share of brawls. I mean, it's going to happen. Every camp has their fair share of brawls. For me, Josh, and I talked about this on my show that I put out about two or 3 hours ago, the big takeaway, I think, today was Jalen Hurts. And if you buy into all the, how he looks this day at camp versus that day at camp, then you bought into how he looked at OTAs and minicamp. All reports from all the people on the ground at OTAs and minicamp was that Jalen Hurts didn't look great, that Jalen Hurts threw a bunch of interceptions, and we tried to kind of calm things down and say, it's minicamp, it's OTAs, he's probably forcing things. He's got to learn to work the middle of the football field. A lot of his interceptions during that time came across the middle of the field. Today, not the case. 15 of 16. He threw that 35-yard touchdown pass the Eagles very graciously gave us on Twitter to Dallas Goedert.
Thank you.
And he threw no interceptions. He had a fantastic day, and while he will have up and down days, he could throw 3 picks tomorrow, and we could change our tune. It does feel like whatever the injury was last year, it's in the past. I liked his answer when he's asked, the age-old question about Nick Sirianni. That feels like we're done talking about that until more drama arises, but that won't happen until they have wins and losses. This feels like a brand new season for Jalen Hurts, and I thought coming out and looking really, really good is a great sign for Eagle fans, because there are still plenty that are probably sitting back and going, okay, is 2022 the outlier? Is it the exception, not the rule? I've never thought that. I think you can get back to that, if not better. And what a great start to, again, a long training camp. He was very, very impressive today based on all reports.
Absolutely, yes. Again, to your point, it's like we knew going in, because having been previously media and you obviously know all the storylines and everything, but like immediately, what was the first question that Nick Sirianni was going to be asked about? And he's obviously prepped too, so him going into it knows that, but it's Jalen Hurts in the relationship. How are things going? Right? And so Sirianni answers that, and then same thing whenever Jalen comes after practice. He's being prepped on it. You will be asked, and it'll be very, very soon, especially because, again, all credit to Diana Russina, who does great reporting for The Athletic, but when a report like that comes out, especially very recently of training camp, although we've been talking about this for forever, but when that came out, then my immediate thought was the same thing, is okay, let's see what he says here with the press conference talking about that, but put it to bed, said, hey, I let you guys see what I let you see. Basically, you don't know all of me.
Right.
But we've got the great relationship. Things are great. We're moving forward. I love to see that. Absolutely. And then you talk about what we're going to see as time keeps going on. So far, because that's all we have to go off of, but so far, it's great. You love to see that next step or transition. You know that they've been looking over, kind of working on the motion and everything within Kellen Moore's offense. I know it was apparently, from all reports, very quick, like 3-step drops, ball gets out. But again, like, when did we ever see that last? It was very rare of, hey, you take the gun, okay, you're going to drop back, and Jalen's trying to just make something happen because he's having to, either he exits the pocket early, or you're just got plays that take 5 seconds to, develop anything. And so now it's like, you know what, there's a little bit of defense can't get the timing right, because they're so used to these 3-step drops, and all of a sudden you hit him with a deep shot, which, the Dallas Goedert touchdown kind of relevant from that side. So I'm excited. Again, I mean, we're just super early on, but I mean, and I see comment. Okay, right. So Weedosaurus says the defense letting Hurts go 15 for 16 is a bad thing. Sure, but again, like, come on, it's training camp. Like, he doesn't have a pass. He does, but he doesn't have a pass rush, right? So there's other elements in play. You take the good. You take. We're going to try to be optimistic, but it's fair. You could say, oh well, the defense allowed 15 of 16 completions. Kind of like it's not all fairness,
right?
So,
hey, and again, it's going to ebb and flow. The defense is going to have their days. The offense is going to have their days. It's how it works. But if you watch Jalen Hurts at any point last season, a lot of people said something's wrong. He's injured. He doesn't look right. He's not running as much. When he does run, he's a little bit slower.
Oh, yeah.
Just based off of one day, and again, come on, we're Eagle fans. I'm trying to be a little excited here. Just the other day, we weren't having any sort of conversation about anything on the football field because it's July and nothing happens. Now we have stuff, and it does look better, and I think every Eagle fan should be a glass half full kind of guy right now. And Kellen Moore's offense, Josh, it's what should excite everybody the most. And I'm a big Fangio fan. I'm a massive fan of the secondary. We'll talk about that. I think the defense is going to be fantastic. You win a Super Bowl this year because of Kellen Moore. Like truly, of all the pieces, just do what all the pieces are supposed to do. AJ's great. Smitty's great. Saquon does what Saquon does. Offensive line is how it's supposed to be. Jalen plays like Jalen. You put that into Kellen Moore's offense, it's a Super Bowl caliber roster. And again, it's terrible because when we're not at training camp, we don't get to see every single play. We can't break down, as the Chiefs get to do because they get to all their plays broadcast. But based on what the other people who are actually there are telling us, the offense has a big, big change, and motion created a lot of completions today. And it's something that 365 days ago, we didn't say that. Like, motion didn't exist, and now it does. And so, again, day one, it could stink tomorrow. It could stink on Friday. It could stink on Saturday. As the days go by, it seems like Kellen Moore's offense is going to be very, very exciting to watch, and I'm pretty pumped.
Absolutely. Yes, I am too. And Hunter Gonzo's asking, we talking about practice? And Benji's also
We are talking about practice. Yes, we are.
Well, of course we are. Because what else should we be talking about here? I understand the AI reference. So we appreciate it. Also appreciate everyone in the chat hanging out. If you haven't already, obviously, hit the like button. But yeah, again, to your point, I mean, it's like, you've got so far from what we've seen, again, because that's all we have to go off of, but Jalen being productive with Kellen Moore's system, I'm in agreement. I think that there's obviously, the caveat of the defense needs to play well enough, but this team is more so based, and it's not even really arguable, this team is more so based on the offense, and that's fine. Yep. Like, you've built it that way. You've paid a lot more money towards your offensive players than defense. If Vic Fangio can have this defense playing, we've talked about it, like a top 15, certainly top 10, that's more than enough. But even if it's kind of average, middle of the pack, then we should be we should be golden. There are enough players, there's good enough playmakers on this team. If they're bought into Kellen Moore's system and they're picking up quickly, then there's really no concerns. And that's what we're going to keep on looking and diving into. And there will probably be overreactions because, as you also alluded to, there's going to be a day where Jalen Hurts throws an interception. There will be a day maybe where he throws 2 interceptions, possibly 3. Like, who knows? But, then you'll see the tweets and the comments and everything else of going like, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible. So I don't know. I always try to take it there with a grain of salt, but to the optimism and the positivity on that side, like, yeah, let's take it so far of saying, all right, this is a different team, regardless of if it becomes, like you have some good days and bad days. Kellen Moore is, I agree, you feel the same way. Kellen Moore is the answer, and he's changed this. So far, that's the positive takeaway. I think it's great.
Definitely the positive takeaway. Other takeaways, obviously, to go ahead and mention as people are continuing to roll in. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us here tonight. The secondary, people were wondering who starts. It was Isaiah Rodgers. You and I both called that. It wasn't Isaiah Rodgers forever. Kelee Ringo got some reps in there with the ones, but really it was Rodgers and Slay like we expected, and then it was Ringo and, of course, Quinyon Mitchell at the 2 spot. Safeties were Reed Blankenship and, of course, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So not a lot of big surprises there in the secondary. JamesBradberry, people are trying to make a big deal out of JamesBradberry playing basically all the safety snaps today. It's notable. He was the second-team starting safety, or second-team safety, not starting. But I think it's very clear that JamesBradberry is going to be moved at some point during this offseason. Who knows when? But credit to JamesBradberry for taking a big hit to the ego. I mean, this was at one point, a Pro Bowl caliber cornerback 2 seasons ago, and now he's running second-team safety on a football team that doesn't have a safety spot for him because they're not going to bench Reed Blankenship and especially not C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So he is He is taking one on the chin right now and having to go ahead and just stay in shape and practice as if he's going to be an Eagle, because there's, hindsight is not 2020 just yet. I think he's going to be moved, and today was the first step, I think, in making it very clear that was going to happen.
For sure, yeah, because as I started looking, I was thinking to myself, where will he end up being, right? Because as we go into it, you're like, maybe he'll get some second team reps, possibly, maybe third team. I know they said they're going to move him to safety, but still my natural inclination was still like, prove it to me, show me that this is actually the case before we say, okay, he is a safety. But yeah, I mean, so far it's just like, all right, second stream. What can you do there? He's obviously, like you said, he's not going to end up being the starter on that side. And I don't know. It's a little bit strange because as far as like trade goes, I don't know does a team look at this and go, hey, he's never played safety before, and now do we give anything for JamesBradberry? Because there's no point to be proven. You could at least, if you had said, let's keep him on the roster, we'll give him some reps here or there. It can be second string, no first team. Don't take those away, but do just enough if you're trying to possibly move him for something of relative value. And then you just go ahead and say, all right, maybe there's a team that takes him. Now, personally, I feel like this is a JamesBradberry getting cut. Like, I don't know of a team that signs up and says, sure, we'll give you a 6th round picks, even a 7th round pick. Like, why would I take the guess? I mean, I don't even care if it's like, hey, positive reports, which, they could be inflated, but hey, positive reports, JamesBradberry is looking great as a safety. The only thing that makes sense is either I guess I should say there's two facets, but either he gets cut or, maybe the Eagles just really feel strongly enough and they're like, yeah, we'll keep him as a 4th safety, because you do need someone else for depth, but it would be, I don't know. I can't personally buy that. Do you see that? Is there any way that JamesBradberry stays here, like devil's advocate, or just any way that you see him on the team?
Devil's advocate, we would take what Howie Roseman said during his joint presser with Nick Sirianni, and that he did not have the depth in the secondary last year that he wanted to. We've talked about it before. Overcompensation offseason. He overcompensates for the lack of secondary depth with 15 plus cornerbacks on this roster. Maybe in his mind, he's like, I'm one bad game away from needing JamesBradberry at cornerback, right? I mean, if heaven forbid one of the other cornerbacks goes down, you would want to move him back to cornerback. Same for safety. They are pretty thin at safety, and behind C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Reed Blankenship, you have an injured pup list Sidney Brown, who definitely cannot be relied upon. He's just a pup on the pup list. He's very young, and then Mekhi Gardner, Sean Stevens. Sorry about that. That was a bad pun, but either way, it's not a lot of depth, and so the Eagles don't. Whatever they're paying JamesBradberry, $8-10 million a year, it's already on the books. Like, it doesn't matter. And even if they were to save that money, it doesn't mean they're going to go spin it into another player unless you want to make a move at the trade deadline, which they've done in the past, but it's a long way from now. I could see him staying on the roster, but I do think you're going to have a football team. There's 31 others in the National Football League that 3 weeks from now, they're looking at their cornerback spot and they're like, man, we're rough right now. We're going to get torn up in this league, and we need to make a move for a guy who at least is better than what we have. And if you need to do that, what better than JamesBradberry? So I think it's going to be fine either way. I don't think it's a big deal. Again, credit to him for putting up with being a backup safety. I'm sure he's working hard at it. Everybody keeps saying that. Slay continued to say that today during his press conference, and we're going to wait and see until someone puts a microphone in his face and asks him how he feels about being a safety. But so far, so good. I think he's done a pretty darn good job. So no worries there. But people making a big deal about Bradberry, I don't think it's a big deal. And honestly, it doesn't really matter because the Eagles have a lot of other big fish to fry, and they're still looking pretty good at all of their different spots in the secondary that aren't, JamesBradberry in the backup safety spot. So,
True.
That's what it is.
And speaking of secondary, it's a fair point. Obviously, we've both talked about it on our shows and even in past instances, but not as far as, when the news broke officially. But Cooper Dejean being injured, then there's kind of like, okay, who's going to be there? So you mentioned the depth within the secondary. Tyler Wallace has a good question too. Who's going to play nickel because you can't count on Maddox staying healthy? And it was interesting because Quinyon Mitchell was getting some reps on the outside and in the slot within the second team. So, I think the natural inclination to begin with is like, all right, if Cooper DeJean's healthy, then he's probably a little bit more likely to go in the slot and Q's going to be on the outside. But Q's still shown that versatility. This isn't the first time that they've moved in the slot. It would be interesting if all of a sudden you said, hey, like your starters are Slay, Isaiah Rodgers on the outside, and then you have Q as slot corner. Again, depending on where Avonte Maddox is, because just, we don't know availability-wise if he'll be there. But, it's promising for the rookies because they're not just playing him in one position. And, I mean, everyone understands this, but it's difficult to learn one role in the NFL coming from a rookie, let alone two. So I think it also proves the point of, hey, Vic Fangio probably views them very highly, as he should. You drafted him for that reason. But the same thing for Christian Parker. So it will be interesting. I'm curious if Q, fully adapts, or that's just a, standard, or I guess an immediate transition because of the injuries, or where we see that. But love having the depth that we've said a number of times. I mean, it's crazy that we look at this team and we go, man, there's just, hey, great. You have an injury. We don't want that, but all right, it doesn't feel near as bad as it did last season, because you see one injury and you go, oh my gosh, who's going to be here? Who's going to fill that role?
Really, the one position group, if you have an injury where things get really dicey, is linebacker. Linebacker to me is like you're one injury away from playing Ben Sumarin or Jeremiah Trotter Jr. a significant amount of reps, and we don't want that. I mean, at least just not yet. In terms of Quinyon Mitchell, I don't want to stretch him too thin. I mean, again, you have a lot of depth there. Zach McPherson, for instance, is someone who is trying very hard to be the backup nickel behind Avonte Maddox. He gets some reps in there as well. We'll have to see exactly how he does in terms of that. But I do think that Quinyon Mitchell, just the idea of getting him as many actual playing snaps in the preseason all over the secondary to prove how smart he is. One of the big draws out of Toledo is this guy is incredibly cerebral. He knows exactly what he needs to do and where he needs to be. Players have echoed that during, OTAs and minicamp. And so get him as many reps as possible. But the hope is it'll be Maddox and then Dean whenever he comes back, or Dejean whenever he comes back. My only concern with the Dejean injury, Josh, besides it being a hamstring, and those were tricky, we don't know when this happened. Right? Jeremy Fowler just said during off-season workouts. The off-season is literally what? From the day he's drafted on April 26th to today? That's like a 2.5-month stretch where it's like, okay, when did this happen? And if it happened in May and he's still having to be held out, it tells you how significant it is. If it happened yesterday and he's being held out for 3 weeks, it's not that bad. But if it's been 2 months and now we need another basically month to get him on the football field, then you got to think about it being a pretty serious injury, and hamstrings can do that, and you got to just rest him as long as physically possible. There is no need to bring him back quickly, because we've seen in the past, Sean Jackson famously, you rush back a hamstring injury, it's pulled pretty darn quickly, especially if you're, cutting like secondary pieces do. So it's a bummer.
Well, absolutely.
Honestly, it is a bummer.
It is. And we hope him, nothing but the best. Prayers of speedy recovery, because we do obviously want Cooper Dejean as quickly as possible. The thought would be, and again, it's total speculation, but the thought would be that it happened in between when minicamp ended until now, just because we didn't hear reports of him missing any time. So I would imagine, who knows, because it was kind of strange wording to begin with from Jeremy Fowler, is like injured based on, what did it say? Like he said, in an awkward position based on some training. So I'm like, that's kind of weird, but okay, whatever it was. So I don't know, some sort of off-season workout, but
sure.
Again, it's like no one knows exactly timing on it. The Eagles feel like 3 weeks-ish should do the trick.
Right.
But we'll see, because, we saw the same timelines even thinking about last year, like Quez Watkins, whenever he goes out, not that people were just screaming like, hey, let's hurry and get him back up on the field. But still, like, you say, all right, hey, he's going to be back in 2 or 3 weeks. And then it ended up, I think, being 4 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. And then even whenever he came back, he tweaked it again. So, yeah, to your point, the hamstring injury to me, as far as like, hey, is this guy going to be able to get on the field and will he be back up to speed as quickly as possible? That one feels like one of those that you're like, man, I don't want to mess with it. Same thing for Sidney Brown. He played great in the Tampa game.
Yep.
Made the play on Mike Evans, injured his hamstring there. And it was like, when is he going to be back on the field? Like, it just takes forever on that side.
It does take a long time. And let's just hope and pray that there are no other serious injuries. And again, like Howie Roseman said, with our long-term plan is to have this guy be an Eagle for the long term, and so you don't need to rush him back. But it is a bummer, because he was making plays at minicamp and OTAs. I saw that question asking Antonio Holmes, was he at minicamp? Yeah, and he was looking really, really good. Josh has a very popular video breaking down just how fantastic he was during, I think it was minicamp, and the fact he's not out there, it's definitely a big bummer. Let's quickly, I saw someone mention Mekhi Becton throwing up 10 times today on what's called a water cooler day. I don't blame him. Listen, if you have a little bit of a stomach bug, or he just ate, or maybe it was a harder practice than he thought it was going to happen, but he didn't leave practice. He threw up a bunch and then just got back into the next rep. So that stuff happens. I saw
ready to block Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, Milton Williams. Just all right. 10 heaves and then get me back in there. So
Becton is getting the ultimate second chance. You do not see this that often in the NFL for offensive linemen. I mean, they are trying their hardest to make him be the backup, do everything offensive lineman who can fill in at a moment's notice. So you can see their entire plan with Becton is, if we have a debilitating injury in the offensive line, we will be okay because of you. And they're trying very hard to make sure that that is the case. And again, pads come on, that's when you're going to start to see what happens, because you're going to get a lot of Becton versus Carter. Becton versus Jordan Davis is an unbelievable size matchup. It's like Clash of the Titans, two mountains going at each other. They're two huge humans, and the winner of that is going to get a lot of, at least love on Twitter. It's going to be very, very exciting. So excited to see what happens tomorrow. As if you're just joining us, the pads go on tomorrow, which I don't know if anyone else in the NFL is doing that. I got to keep an eye on the rest of the practices. Nobody else had pads today. Baltimore, for instance, has been playing for a little bit because they have the Hall of Fame game. But the fact the Eagles are going pads quickly is very impressive.
I like it. I just hope that, quite honestly, as far as the Becton and JD matchup goes, like we've been getting good videos so far. If the Eagles social account hears this, or anyone is connected to anyone within the Eagles social team, just maybe kind of nudge them a bit.
More
say, hey,
better.
if we can get that matchup, we'd love to see. Right, any video is great, but like if we get any footage of that matchup, it'll go crazy. So maybe we could get that. But
never know.
For those that are in attendance, kudos to you, because you're getting to see the clash of the Titans, as you said. So that would be pretty fun. I'm not going to lie, but it works out beautifully for Becton. Who knows how serious? It's so strange because, like you have, is his toe about to fall off? Like, and maybe I'm wrong, but laceration to me just sounds a whole lot more serious than say, like he's got a cut toe, right? So it could be both. It could be, the same thing. Basically, it's kind of semantics there, but I'm just curious how serious it actually is. Maybe it's very serious, but in my mind, I'm kind of thinking to myself, I am guessing, I am presuming that it's a very minor injury, but they're going, you know what? There's no reason to rush it. Landon is obviously our for sure left guard, where there's no chance that anybody's beating him out. So you know what? Hey, we got Mekhi Becton here. Why don't we just go ahead and give him some more reps at guard? This works out perfectly. Landon, you take a day off. You'll be back tomorrow, or be back on they have a walkthrough Friday, be back on Saturday, and let Becton have a few days of reps. So it does, as you were saying, it's a great second opportunity. Maybe we'll see he takes advantage of it, but it will be very curious because this is going to be a battle that's going on all through preseason for sure.
Question here from Aunt Mott saying, what do you think about the wide receiver 3 situation? What's going on there? Sirianni mentioned it's one he's very interested in. Paris Campbell ran the entire day based on what I read, that he was wide receiver 3 and caught multiple passes from Jalen Hurts. And so, as we mentioned during OTAs, this is Paris Campbell's job to lose. It's day 1, so obviously he was, seniority status in there as wide receiver 3, being a veteran in the NFL. It's going to take a lot for Ainias Smith and Johnny Wilson to, pry that from him. They probably won't during training camp. It'll probably be like a mid-season thing if one of them is playing better. But Paris Campbell's going to get a good shot at this. But Johnny Wilson, and same with Ainias Smith, as soon as the pads come on, what do you got? 11 on 11s, make some plays. And you got Kenny Pickett as your backup, who continues to stay very, very quiet. No mention of him today, hardly at all. No videos of him today either. But he can be a guy to get you the football, to showcase your ability to maybe go and compete for that wide receiver 3 spot at some point in the future. But as of right now, it doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon.
I believe, I can't remember who tweeted this. One person tweeted that Kenny Pickett, possibly even as great of a throw that it was from Jalen to Dallas Goedert, apparently might have made the play of the day or the throw of the day with a pass to Grant Calcaterra over Kelee Ringo. So for what that's worth, who knows? Because we don't have video of it, so I don't have proof, but just taking a reporter's word for it.
Right.
But again, like you say there, it'll be interesting to see when those rookies step up, or how they step up, and how many reps they're going to be getting with the first team, second team, where that falls into play. But nothing surprising also within, Paris Campbell being that wide receiver 3 for right now. Nope. So shout out to the ARS bench, dropping in late what I miss. We're just recapping, the day, kind of going over some winners, losers, not really losers, because we're not being optimistic, and it's day 1. So it's the Eagles won as a whole. All right. You're playing yourself. But John Kempsky also asking, was Landon at the slip and slide? He was the one hosting it too. Yeah, so that's,
I think he was at his house.
Maybe his own fault, but
Austin Finsterbush says, is Nakobe Dean closer to being out than in? I would say in than out, just based on today. Just based on today, he's getting first-team reps. And if this whole idea that Zach Bond is Vic Fangio's favorite, which so far it seemed to be the case, if that was true, then Dean would have run exclusively with the twos. But they rotated everybody in there to the point that Devin White, at one point was not the starting linebacker. It was Bond and Nakobe Dean. So they're trying very hard. They obviously like Nakobe Dean. This is clearly a favorite inside the building. They think that they have something special if he can just stay healthy, if he can just prove it on the football field. Much like Mekhi Becton, they're getting, every single chance to make this kid good. The question will come when the pads come on. Can he actually go ahead and hold his own? So, again, tomorrow, yes. We're going to get some answers tomorrow. And it's just day 2, and there'll be more answers on, Saturday's practice and more answers on Monday's practice the following week. But tomorrow, there will be answers to a lot of the questions that we've had in terms of physicality.
Yeah, which we love to see because, again, we're, especially on the defensive side, like you're saying, we're talking about these different guys, where they're going to be able to make the impact. I will still hold to this, just, my own personal opinion here. I will still hold to that even with, yes, he got some first-team reps, Howie Roseman doubled down, triple down, quadruple down, whatever you want to say for Nakobe Dean. It wasn't surprising, but he basically gave, I think, almost verbatim. I'd have to go back and listen to his previous press conference, but talking about we have all the confidence in the world, Nakobe, we love Nakobe, all this other stuff. It seemed like he said basically the same thing, which is fine, and I totally understand it. I'm not saying that he can't, but just personal opinion. I still am very positive that Zach Bond wins out. So maybe I'm wrong. I could be dead wrong because we've seen crazier things happen. But the ability that he has, the athleticism, especially within coverage that I think that Fangio sees from him, is where I see him winning out. Again, it's just one play without pads, as we were talking about, and no pressure on the QB, all this other stuff. But made a good play, breaking up a pass. I think that doesn't go unnoticed. And, it's the combination of the plays that he's making, and then for me, it's like he was one of the first signed players when it's like, hey, go get him, and he's Andrew Van Ginkel comparisons. That to me says Fangio's not just signing him as like a depth acquisition. I'm signing him, and if he plays 75% of what I thought he could be, he still probably wins the starting job. So I could be wrong. I don't know.
There you go. Josh H. with a $5 super chat. Josh, we appreciate that. Honestly, glad we have a competent backup quarterback. Jalen played on an injured knee because Mariota was trash. That, no lies detected there. That is very true. A lot of people dragging the Pickett trade, and yet, if Jalen's got to miss 3 weeks, you're going to feel really good about the Pickett trade because the idea is that he can still play. A couple years removed from being a first-round draft pick and did win games in Pittsburgh, despite, not necessarily winning the big games, but still winning plenty of games. So, pretty good there.
Yes.
Toe laceration, West Coast Phillies in the medical field. Laceration can be a small cut to a deep laceration. Yeah, it's probably nothing serious. I think he'll be out there very quickly, but I'm sure it was just causing a little bit of discomfort. And so, your toe, we got to move on that. Shoe comes on a little too tight, doesn't feel good. And we all know Landon's great, so no need to, rush him back. So not a real concern today, I would say.
Yeah, no rush for Landon. Again, like you said there, it is just, it's comical that if that happened at his slip and slide event that he's hosting, it's like, okay, the odds of getting injured at, but yes, there's no rush. And like Tracy Ann mentioned before, felt like maybe this is a ploy to get Becton, which is, I can understand that. We could get behind the possibility of maybe it's not a full blown ploy, but it's like, oh, hey, Landon, how you feeling? He shows up in the building. You okay? You got something going on here. You need to get checked out. Yeah, let's give you a couple of days off. No, let's not risk it, right? So then Becton gets to play some reps. Who knows?
Hey, there you go. Conspiracy theories already on day 1. I like it. I like it a bunch. People not mentioned today.
We just got to get to regular season.
Of course. People not mentioned today that very excited to get some footage on and hear about Will Shipley. Obviously, we need actual pads to go on to hear more from Will Shipley. Kelee Ringo, a little quiet today. He might have been burnt for, I think it was the Calcaterra touchdown, if I was reading that correctly, or one of the touchdowns. But Ringo is somebody definitely to keep an eye on. Very, very high upside. We talk about linebackers. Dean was mentioned, but not a lot from any of the other linebackers. Maybe one pass breakup there from Zach Bond. Devin White, though, excited to see what he can do. I think the entire defensive line could really be the deciding factor in the Eagle defense being great or just really good this year. Because the secondary is going to be really good. We know that, right? And the front four, which Fangio relies on a lot more than a rotational sort of pass rush if Nolan Smith comes alive, if Jalen Carter is the beast in year 2, if Jordan Davis finally figures things out and can play 10% more snaps. What does Bryce Huff look like? We got one picture of him today from the Eagles. He looks massive.
Hey.
That's what I'm excited to see most going forward the next couple of days is what the defensive line looks like. Because you get, iron sharpening iron when they go against the offensive line. It's going to be about, my best versus your best and winner take all. And if they start getting some wins against these Eagle tackles, it's going to be a bunch of fun.
Yeah, and everyone remembers the matchups that we get between offensive linemen, defensive linemen. Some of the videos, hopefully, we'll get a lot of those. But it's always fun, right? Because it's get a little bit better of a semblance, especially with the pads coming on. Of can a defensive player win on the pass rush? Much easier to kind of just slide through in terms of you don't have any pads on. They can't really get a hold because there's a little holding that goes on every play. Most offensive linemen even say that. So there's a gray area on that side. But that's what I'm excited about because, it's you look at it from a bunch of different areas. And I was thinking, which, I think everybody's of the same mindset. It's like every time that we see Saquon, I don't know how long it takes before we realize that Saquon is an Eagle or just fully come to terms with that. But it's fantastic to see him out there in the midnight green. But I had the same thought of iron sharpening iron as far as O-line, D-line. Saquon Barkley as a running back, you want to say, yes, there's some question marks for the linebackers. There's a little bit of, lack of depth. Who knows where that goes? You don't want a whole lot of injuries, obviously, all that side. But if you're going to just say, all right, who's going to match up and who's going to make these guys better every single day of practice? Saquon Barkley and these linebackers having to, I know it's not tackling him fully, but still being able to read where he's going, read the holes. I know the offensive line, defensive line play a big component as well, but then that combined with coverage, there's not a whole lot of guys in the league that you would say, oh, there's a better rep that you're going to get against. So, for that point, even alone, it's like, you got to be confident in it because the linebackers are not going to be, you won't be, I guess, scared, maybe not the right word. You won't be unprepared when you go up against another team and say, well, we've got Saquon in practice every single day. So I like that facet. I love the fact, again, you got the defensive line going against one of the best offensive line, if not the best. So it'll be interesting to see who wins the reps because, every single year, you get those reports. We don't get to see it as much, but it's, like last year, Jalen Carter blowing up the Eagles O-line occasionally. Yeah. There's some reps that he had. Will it be, does Nolan Smith make more of a name? Because he last year had a lot of hype and then we didn't see or hear as much of that. So I don't know. I'll be interested to see once we get to some of those drills, but at least football is I guess meaningful reps is back. It's still within training camp, but it's meaningful.
Definitely way more meaningful than it was last week when there were no reps. So, take whatever we can get. Isaac Torres, $2 super chat here. Why does Nick Wright hate the Eagles so much? Great question. I never got to ask him. He didn't hate the Eagles as much. He kind of did whenever I worked for him back as a New York intern back in the old college days. But I don't know. I've not talked to him in a while, but he definitely doesn't like the Eagles, and he hates Aaron Rodgers. I know why he hates Aaron Rodgers. I'm not sure why he hates the Eagles. So you can go ahead and deduce the first one there. But he cannot stand Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets, and I wonder why these days. But not sure. Can't speak for Nick Wright. Cannot speak for Nick Wright. K.A. Mai with the 2. He says, huge fan from Cali. Go to the Rams game this year. Should we go to the Rams game this year, Josh?
Let's go.
It'd be pretty fun.
It would be fun. To see the stadium. Yeah, I don't know what the cost of the tickets alone, but yeah, between the flight and the lodging and game and everything, it would be pretty expensive. I don't know. There's probably other games. I'm not gonna lie. There's probably other games on the list that are better, higher percentage.
Baltimore potentially one. Baltimore maybe. We've been talking a little, maybe a little Baltimore.
That would be.
That'd be fun.
Yep,
that'd be fun.
Been to Baltimore before, so went to the Baltimore Orioles game. That was pretty fun.
Okay.
I don't know that I would necessarily just hang out in Baltimore. Not gonna lie, but to go to the game, yeah, absolutely. You get to go see the Eagles. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think we beat Baltimore? Did you have them in the prediction? Did you pick us winning or losing?
I don't even remember. I probably picked to lose because you were coming off of the Rams game in Week 13. I think it's Week 14.
Yeah,
it's tough. It's tough. But what are these teams in Week 14? Right, the Eagles could be a juggernaut in Week 14.
Right.
The Eagles Week 9 last year were a juggernaut. They literally went down Buffalo, Kansas City. They had been rolling and then they hit a wall. So what are the Eagles by week 14? That's so far in advance. It's like September 6th is my main focus right now. And which, speaking of, Jordan Love not practicing until he gets a new contract, which I'm sure is coming very, very soon. But they're putting a lot of money into somebody who looks the part, but only looked the part for about half a season. Very interesting. I mean, if there's a quarterback that could have a disappointing year, it feels like Jordan Love, because he's been anointed as like top 5 based off of, 8 games last year. Basically, they were struggling early on in that season, and he figured things out. So, I'm not saying he's going to be bad, but I'm saying I'm very interested to see how September 6th goes.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And, and this is it's kind of along the same lines, but to a little bit of a different point. I just love the fact that you got the contract negotiations, you got him holding out of camp, you got all these, talk about Hassan Reddick not showing up to Jets, which why would he? I'm totally on board with him. Like, do that. Joe Douglas, I don't know what you're doing when you make a trade. Like, what on earth? I'm not going to get into it, but I just don't know how you could wrap your head around like trading and not having a deal done. But regardless of that, you see the 49ers, not only is Brandon Ayuk interested in a contract, you got Trent Williams, who is wanting to renegotiate, get something done there. So you got the Niners troubles. You got Dallas, obviously, with CeeDee Lamb in the situation there. Dak Prescott wants to be the highest paid. After that, it'll be Micah Parsons, but they can't manage the cap worth anything. So just, everyone understands this, but just an extra kudos for Howie Roseman and the way he addresses the needs beforehand. You get things done. As most people are watching Hard Knocks as well, we're getting the extra insight to Saquon Barkley. The fact that Joe Shane was like, there's no way that Philly could do that. It doesn't make any sense in the world. Yet, according to Spot Track, the Eagles are 8th most still in cap space available?
A lot of money.
Like 8th most in the league, and you have this roster? Like, it's unbelievable. He's an expert.
Yeah, it's a great point. And another great point, too, is the fact that we're getting to a point where this whole Justin Simmons conversation, which I don't like to linger on because nothing's happening with that, they're not signing Justin Simmons until JamesBradberry is off this roster. So just for people that are trying to will that, and I've seen a lot of thumbnails with Justin Simmons' picture on it, just trying to like anything possible. Justin Simmons, it's like, okay, it never happened. I tried to stop doing it a long time ago. We're not at that point because even a semi-weak depth part, which is the secondary in terms of safety, not cornerback, there's not a lot of room for him until you get rid of somebody, and Bradberry have to be that guy. So, is what it is. The Reddick thing is hilarious, though. I mean, it just... And I'll be honest, I like Aaron Rodgers. I think I'm rooting for him this year. I think the whole, Achilles last year was awful. I mean, the hype around the Jets was like the most hyped football team in the world going into that season. I mean, they were ready to rock. I think Garrett Wilson is fantastic, like all this stuff. But I think he's going to be great. I just cannot believe that they have mishandled Hassan Reddick because they need a pass rusher up there in New York. And I get not wanting to pay Reddick. I mean, come on, we all said it. It was $25 million was way too much, but you give up a third-round draft pick regardless, so you might as well get something in return, and then you just burn that third-round draft pick, into nothing. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. It really is surprising. But, hey, again, like you just mentioned, I mean, Dallas is a mess right now. I mean, the fact that their number one receiver is not there, it's not a good look. The 49ers are struggling in terms of Brandon Ayuk didn't even want to be there. Philadelphia seems locked in. I think Philadelphia, I mean, even Green Bay, in terms of their quarterback, not practicing yet, it's Philadelphia seems like a team that's locked in, and the vibes seem very, very strong, again, after one training camp practice, but, it's what it is.
Would it be crazy to say, if you're just, and again, this is only off of like the contract negotiations and some players being upset, which I know that happens every single year, so I'm not acting like, oh my gosh, this is new for the NFL, new for teams, and it doesn't just immediately go, oh, well, they're going to have a bad season. But if you use the terminology of locked in terms of you got most of the contracts taken care of, players fairly happy with the squad. I mean, as far as the NFC goes and, a top ranked team or someone that we expect to play well, it feels like Philadelphia, obviously, and Detroit. Like, I think that Detroit, they made all these signings. I don't know if you agree with the payments on some of those, but hey, you take care of some of your guys, you get the contracts done. They feel locked in that sense. Again, I'm not saying that as like the Niners are going to be an easy out or anything like that. They probably will be good, but it's not the worst thing these days to turn on the radio and go, all right, let's listen to all the crying and, all the terrible stuff that's happening to Dallas because they don't have they don't have money to spend. They're not spending money. They've got a wide receiver that wants to get paid, and they're hurting themselves by taking longer. Because if Jordan Love signs a deal, he's not in the same, it's not exactly apples to apples, but still, if he signs a contract, more than likely, even what he signs is going to overall increase the market for a quarterback. So Dak Prescott is still not signed, and it's just going to make it, that much better for us, but that much worse for Dallas because hey, congrats. You get to pay a couple million extra now. So good for you.
There you go. I saw someone mention in the comments section the Vikings cornerback tore his ACL today, which is awful. Day one at camp is just terrible. I did not hear about this, but I have it here, and it's their second-round cornerback, Mekhi Becton. He tore his ACL, according to Tom Pelissero, during training camp today. He played 15 games in 3 starts as a rookie last season, and so obviously, again, if you want to get rid of James Bradberry, you got to find a place for him to go. Maybe Minnesota is an option there. Minnesota, obviously, kind of a rebuild, kind of. You got a new quarterback, but they obviously have, the $100 million plus wide receiver, so you can't really rebuild just based on those numbers. Maybe they want a cornerback. We'll keep an eye on this, but for those in the comment section who are asking, yes, the Vikings did lose a cornerback today. Injuries do happen. That's awful. Thoughts and prayers to him, and hopefully the Eagles can stay healthy. But if you need a trade partner, there's potentially one. So keep an eye on that. Tim Pauly with the 5. Shady, D. Jackson, Acho. So they're concerned about Moore's offense after Hurts' presser today. Really? They already said that? I definitely wasn't. What do you guys think? What did Hurts? I watched the entire Hurts press conference. Gosh. What did he say today that concerned you, Josh?
I honestly, I really don't know.
No idea.
Maybe they're going to talk about the continuity, the fact that, Jalen's like, 10 offensive coordinators over 8 seasons. I'd love to be at the point of, having all that. He said that before, but it's like a combo. So again, I don't know I'm assuming that's part of what they're referencing, but it's like, that's not new. He said that a month ago, 2 months ago, whenever it was. Yeah. So it hasn't changed. If anything, it's been like, okay, you've had extra time now to get adjusted to Kellen Moore's. But I'm with you of what he's talking about with the offense, the prep work, the changes, what's going to be taking place. It's I don't know. But again, people have to have something to talk about. So maybe it's just like you spin it to a negative. But I don't know what you take from that.
It's hard to be negative on day one. Geez, it's like
I agree, but
I'm so tired of being negative from last year because you had to be. We literally had 8 straight weeks of just pure negativity and then a very negative offseason until April, and then things really turned around, and we're all happy and excited now. Day one of training camp is not the day to be upset about schemes or coaching or anything like that, right? And even the whole Nick Sirianni stuff, to me today, both Sirianni and Hurts have put to bed the whole idea that they hate each other until we actually get more physical proof that they do in terms of a silent altercation, in terms of another press conference, in terms of losing football games,
or
whatever.
Jalen tweeting Sirianni, or anything like that.
It's done though. Like today, it's done, and there's no point in talking about it going forward because it's over. It's in the past. And the same thing I think goes for being negative about Kellen Moore's offense. We haven't seen any part of Kellen Moore's offense to know if it's good or bad. The only thing that you can actually take, the cold, hard truth of what you can take today from Kellen Moore's offense is what we said earlier, motion. That's it. And if you think motion is bad for Jalen Hurts, I don't know what to tell you because last year without any motion looked pretty darn bad overall. So, for me, motion is a big factor in the Bills being really good, the Chiefs being really good, the Dolphins offense being top in the league. Philadelphia never used that. The one thing more we know for a fact that's done, because we're not inside the building, is that offense. Big fan of that. I'm excited for it. Come on, we can't be negative. We cannot be negative. But D-Jack, Shady, Acho, they played, so maybe they more know than us. Love to talk to them about it.
Well,
what are you going to do?
Random Eagles fan says, according to the Speak Thing, Jalen said that's concerning. Apparently says it's about going out there and playing when talking about Kellen. So I guess at the end, whenever he said he lets me use my instincts, it's about going out there and playing. Maybe that's the concerning part. That it's I don't know. To your point, it's like it feels like you're just reaching for something. It's the first day of camp.
Yeah.
I guess I like the fact that I'm going to paraphrase it. I can't remember what he said, but Jalen's comment of hey, people don't understand or they don't know what they don't know. He says some people don't know what they don't know, and I can live with that. There you go. So, people are going to talk, but at this point, he's like, you know what, whatever. I show you guys what you need to know. Sometimes you want to take an inference from that, or just make your own conjecture there. But it's like, just move on. It's day one to your point. It's like, what are you trying to do here? It wasn't concerning to me.
What are you trying to do with taking Jalen Hurts' press conference words to mean anything other than what Jalen has done his entire career, which is try to tell you nothing? Jalen is the one guy who tries so hard to be as bland as possible during an Eagle press conference and tell you virtually nothing. Like, it gets to the point where I almost don't want to use his words, his press conference, clips in my videos because he's not saying anything. I mean, it's just like, bare minimum, here's what you need to know, move on. And so to try to be like, oh, he's trying to tell us that he hates Kellen Moore it's a stretch that I am not, I'm just not ready for it. I'm just
quite a bit. If people are going there, they're spinning it so much. But also just really quickly, as far as Jalen goes, because I understand, and I think a lot of people are of the same page, which is fine, because it's like, hey, look, if I give the media anything, it's going to be spun into twisted my words, and it's a bad look, or they're going to criticize. So I totally understand that. Yes, and AJ, the same thing. But I will say, seeing Jalen and just the personality that he was showing, or the energy that he had, even in the press conference, but you see some of the videos with him interacting with the fans and running out of the tunnel, or the kind of made up tunnel there. I'm not gonna lie, he looked better than last season. Like, I'm just saying, because it was more of a guard. I don't know if it was guarded as much. I feel like it was, but whatever the case, it was. He just seemed like he was a little bit lighter. He's just kind of free flowing. Like, we're excited. We got lots to do here. Obviously, he's still careful with what he's saying, but you got a little bit of a smile. You got a little bit more personality, and I'm fine with him going either route. Because again, it's like, hey, you have to be guarded with what you say, but I just like seeing a little bit more of some smiling and some excitement, because I think the whole squad can feel that. And, you got it from Saquon and AJ in his press conference as well. But there's no negatives for me. I again, day one, I don't know how you want to take that. If people want to be negative and criticize him, fine, I guess, but they have to say something, I suppose, because there's so much negativity about the Niners and the Cowboys and all these other teams. So they figure, well, let's just say something. Let's have something to talk about, that there's a little bit of concern.
I guess it's day one. I mean, literally day one. There's and Josh's show comes out later tonight. My show is already out there. There's plenty of takeaways you can have from day one. I mean, even with one practice, you can talk about where people were in the depth chart. You can talk about which plays worked, which plays didn't. You can talk about, what Nick Sirianni said about Cooper Dejean. Like, there's a lot of things to cover today that isn't like, does Jalen Hurts hate the new offensive coordinator? My take at 5. And it's like, okay, well, is what it is. But, they got to fill 2 hours. I think Speak is 2 hours long. I'm not sure. I think it's maybe an hour long, 2 hours long. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of time. Got to fill the A gap and the B gap and the C and the D, and, you got to go all the way down. So, is what it is. I was very excited. As we get ready to wrap things up here, I think it was all positive. I think the vast majority of Eagle fans are super stoked for this season. I think that the offense looks fantastic. I'm very excited to see how they do going forward. When the pads come on tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Get a lot more battles up front in the trenches, Josh, between offensive line, defensive line. My one concern continues to be linebacker, because I just don't know if Devin White's Devin White, they're fine. If Devin White's not Devin White, they're in trouble, right? That's my takeaway from it, and the depth is not that strong. Yeah. Everywhere else is like pretty darn good. I mean, everywhere else it's like you got to feel really, really good.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm right there with you. Again, it's super early, but what we've seen, what we've heard, you've got the depth in a lot of areas, as we've talked about, and you've got competition, and it's good competition. So it's not a negative at this point. Yes, if we're going into the regular season, or we're super close to the regular season, we've seen some preseason games and joint practice reports and all this, and it's like, whoa, okay, there's, whether it's linebacker, whether it's wide receiver, maybe there's another spot that we're not concerned about now, that we look at it and go, okay, this is not, I don't feel this way, but let's just say, for example, what if center? What if Cam Jurgens is like, oh my gosh, like he's just not looking great. Okay, yeah, maybe we can push a little bit of a panic button, but it's day one of training camp. So far, it's promising. The guys have really good vibes. You don't have people that are holding out at camp. Like, it could be much worse. You could pick a whole lot of other teams and go, yeah, we'd love to be in a different situation right now, but the guys are focused. They're ready to make an impact. They're competing. Like you said, the pads come on tomorrow. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to see who gets a sack, or which lineman pancakes a D line, whatever. But I'm looking forward to it.
There you go. All right, we're at the top of the hour right now. I know Josh still has some editing to do, so we're going to give Josh a couple minutes off here, that we can get his video out. Excited to see what happens with that. And listen, guys, it's here, and we're giving you guys full updates almost every single day. You're going to have a lot of content, full breakdowns. Josh and our goal is to give you guys the highest quality, but also make sure that, you watch a couple videos, you know exactly what happened at training camp today. You don't have to go dig through tweets like we do. You don't have to read a bunch of articles or watch Speak to see if, Shady liked him or not. it's your one-stop shop right here, and we're going to have a lot of fun, including the first preseason game, which is basically 3 weeks away. So very excited for all the updates that come with that as well, which we've been teasing and we're working on and very excited for. So should be a bunch of fun. Appreciate you guys. For Josh Davis, I'm Thomas Mott, signing off. Happy training camp day 2. Pads on tomorrow. We'll break it all down. This has been the Wednesday Link Live.
Go Birds.